F1 Max Verstappen because he was very good, as he always is. What's going on, Karma, Frank, Sling, Outlaw? I hope you're all well. You know what? I think on some of these race weekends, it's important that we get excited and enjoy things where we can, right? I think, if you ask me, I think qualifying has been the highlight of the past few race weekends. I will be honest, with notable exclusions, Singapore and Las Vegas, which were, of course, very, very good races. But that qualifying session, when you break it down and get a bit nuanced as about Frank, I apologise, man. The tardiness absolutely is not acceptable. But give me a blab, a very good reason for this one. Listen, before we get to qualifying, let's talk about some pre-race, pre-free practice shenanigans. Because as always, there were many to talk about. Christian Horner comes out and says Anthony Hamilton, Lewis Hamilton's dad, made contact with the team to discuss the potential of his son, Sir Lewis Hamilton, 7-time champion, making his way across the RB20, the Red Bull's machine, for 2024 thereon. Absolute chaos, so said social media. How dare you insinuate something so blasphemous, said Colt LH and Team LH alike. Well, let's take a step back for a second, peddlers, because it's not that rogue, in all honesty. So Lewis Hamilton has been in a dog of a car, by Toto Wolff's own admission, an absolute ishbox of a car for the past 2 years, 24 months. He's 38 years of age. He's absolutely in the latter stages of his career, despite what anyone wants to tell you. F1 is a young man's game. Why would he not, Lewis Hamilton, have his dad or his handlers reach out to Christian Horner and Red Bull and Helmut Marko to discuss the possibility of him potentially going across to the Bulls that are red? Why would he not? He's a world champion indeed and wants to continue winning world championships. So desperate is Sir Lewis for the 8th. Why would he sit there in a car that ostensibly is not capable of winning a championship as at November of 2023? Of course, you ask the question. This is what F1 drivers do throughout history. Scratch and scrape for every last sinew, every last millimetre of advantage. Ergo, why would Sir Lewis, in a dog of a Mercedes-Benz AMG Petronas car, not look for brighter, sunnier horizons at the Bulls that are red, or at their very least have the bloody conversation? So to all of the furore around that, I say, you know what, pipe down, chaps. Pipe down, guys and girls. This is what's happened throughout all of history. Listen, I remember 1992, 93, Prost and Mansell in reverse respective order. 92 was Mansell's time, his first and only championship. 93 was Prost. Ostensibly, it was clear that Frank Williams, with Adrian Newey, of course, had designed a Williams that nobody was going to challenge. So, of course, Alan Prost came out of retirement once he secured himself a contract. The best drivers want to find themselves in the best machinery. So why would Sir Lewis not have a chat with Christian? You don't even need to come out and deny that. I suppose Lewis does need to come out and deny it because he's now signed a contract with Mercedes. And so, listen, there is agency in there. It's not great for the troops if they hear that you're having conversations as the leader of the team, as the elder statesman, the 7-time. It's not a good look. Yeah, and still, I don't think that's... If you know F1, then you know that the best drivers want to drive in the best cars. Like, the last couple of seasons has been testament to that, has it not? We are live indeed. Volknerrock. Love that name, by the way. Yeah, we are live. I hope you can all hear me, Dwayne. Volknerrock, what's going on? First time. Yeah, you know what, Volknerrock, I'm going to start doing these more often. At least any race weekend, there will be 2, one post-quali and one post-race. Let's get to the nuts and bolts of quali, because I thought this was going to be one that was tumultuous, where it was worth suspending your disbelief that for once in the 2023 season, Red Bull weren't going to have it all their own way, Q1 to Q3. Oh, ye of little faith, Cameron. What do you know, bruv? But again, forgive me, because if anybody watched free practice, Max Verstappen was struggling in that car to find balance, right? He was struggling with the handling dynamic that normally he leverages to his advantage. We all know that my guy Peter Windsor will talk about him short cornering. And again, if you think about the most important corners around the Abu Dhabi track, the Yas Marina circuit, turns 5, turns 6 and 7. Each one of those are followed by super long straights. So what I'm talking about is sector 2. Max Verstappen's driving style, about which there's a fantastic shout out to my guy Jonathan on Twitter. There's a fantastic article written by Mark Hughes, I want to say on motorsport.com, that talks about Lewis's driving style as versus Max's style. The beauty to Max, again, Peter's been on the money around Max's, that he doesn't really care for, he doesn't want to necessarily be last of the late breakers. All he's concerned with is balance and shallow corners, aka short corners, if you're a listener of Peter Windsor. Turns 5 and 7, followed by such long straights, being so acute in their turning angle, speak to a Max Verstappen in that sense. And that was borne out when you've seen Q2 and Q3, Q2 in particular even, when all of a sudden it looks like Lando's starting to pull out purple sectors. Sector 2, granted, Max is on fresh rubber, fresh red label soft compound tyres, Lando Norris on scrubs. But all of a sudden, when you compare their sector 2, it looks like, for a second, it looks like Lando is going to be a worthy challenger here. But then when you compare their sector 2s, these turns that I'm talking about, turn 5 and turn 7, both very acute hairpin S corners, 90-degree ones, after which long straights is what you're getting. And so if you can nail both those turns, you get a cumulative advantage down the straights, right? Your maximum velocity is higher. I have no doubt that so aerodynamically efficient is that Red Bull in hot lap qualifying trim that they would have put extra downforce into their setup. But nevertheless, the point that I'm trying to make to you guys, free practice, it didn't look promising for Red Bull. Max came out over the radio. What's going on? The car looks bright. The balance isn't great. It's bumpy. What's going on? I don't know whether they fudged up the ride height temporarily. I don't know whether they hadn't baked in enough downforce into Max's front wing. So notorious is the way that Max prefers that car to be very twitchy at its front end. Who knows? But anyway, Q1 comes around. Everyone's expecting Lando to be there challenging, the Ferraris to potentially be challenging. George Russell's looked super fast throughout all of the free practices. FP3, 2 of the 3 of them, he ended up on pole, if that's even a thing in free practice. And so, of course, Mercedes were going to go well, weren't they? Also, we thought they did one of the switcheroonies. As good or as improved as that Red Bull was between free practice and qualifying, that we saw an equal and opposite, a massive downturn in the pace of the Mercedes, which, I don't know, that's W14 time, right? It's still 2023, the last race of what else would you expect? What else would you expect? So Q1 takes place, and the last of the late breakers, excuse the pun, Carlos Sainz Jr. doesn't make it out, does he? And of course, he's saying something to the effect of he was impeded. I want to try and remember the turns. Turn 3 to turn 5 by an Alpine in the hands of Esteban Ocon. No chance, Carlos Sainz. That's not true. I just heard him talking to Rachel Brooks just now, and he gave a more honest assessment of the circumstance. Listen, we weren't ideal in terms of the traffic, but I felt like I was a tad hampered. You weren't hampered, Carlos. You just didn't get the lap in, mate. Now, I think Carlos, to Carlos's credit, I feel that he's the type of driver, that will benefit from clean air. But all that's gone to pot now that they've banned overtaking in the pit lane on the back of Max Verstappen's very aggressive overtaking in the pit lane in free practice, right? Now, on the back of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, the rules per the FIA were that if you weren't pushing in the pit lane, then scoot to the left, and anybody overtaking, you can overtake on the right. All change as at the Yas Marina circuit, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix this weekend. Overtaking is banned now. And that's mainly because the drivers weren't happy at Max Verstappen's manoeuvres. I don't hate it. Per Martin Brundle, again, listen, if it's against the rules, then it's against the rules and you can't do it. But I didn't mind seeing Max Verstappen get a bit aggressive in the pit lane and scoot round these buds around the right hand side like he was in the fast lane on the M25. I didn't mind it, I'll be honest with you, but that's all overruled now, which, by the way, Pedders, if they roll this forward into next year, is going to cause problems for qualifying. Right, imagine it's Brazil again. You can effectively do an Alonso on Lewis Hamilton 2007 in Hungary, right? You can go as slow pretty much within reason. You can go as slow as you want in the pit lane and jeopardize these guys, even be able to get a hot lap in the end, at the meat end of the qualifying session. And that matters for me. What I want to do is between now and next year, right? The gap again is like something like 98 days between now and lights out for the first race at Bahrain, 91 days for the first testing per Ted Kravitz on the internationally syndicated Sky Sports F1 broadcast. But here's what I mean to say. Between now and then, I think the FIA have got to maybe ripping at the rule book is a bit extreme, but they need to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, right? And trend all of these tax avoidance, these loophole issues, these areas, shades of grey areas in the rules that are open to interpretation, bend or break. They need to trend all of them out, right? Write them out in the regs. Don't turn up in Bahrain next year and nothing's changed. Not good enough, FIA. $1 billion sport. Hundreds of millions of fans around the world, paying customers, by the way, and they deserve better, if not the bloody drivers. There you go. I've said it. There's my FIA rant for this session. So in FP3, Verstappen was struggling with his handling dynamic, wasn't he? And that gave the rest of the world, the other 19 on the grid, hopes. It did give them hopes temporarily, but again, turn up to Q1 and all of a sudden the magicians in that Red Bull garage had fixed it. I'm keen to see whether it was ride height, whether it's a bit extra downforce on the front wing. How all of a sudden was that car so fixed? And Max is brilliant. Best again. I will say this for the avoidance of doubt. If you were a betting man, not that I am, 5-4 was the price. Max Verstappen was favourite to drop it on pole. Fastest qualifier is the way that you'd characterise the wager. And Max Verstappen was favourite, but only marginal, 5-4. That means that the odds makers expected, if you run a simulation of this qualifying session 100 times, they expected Max Verstappen, the Dutchman, the 3-time reigning world champion, to put it on pole 44% of the time. To my mind, peddlers, that's one of the first times that Max Verstappen for pole has been less than 50%. And I think the experts, the so-called experts, the odd makers, had done that based upon what they'd seen in free practice, because Red Bull they didn't look hot. There were issues. The setup wasn't quite right. And Max said as much. Even Helmut Marko bet €400 to one Christian Horner that Max wouldn't even make it on the front row. So confident in Red Bull's deficiencies as far as the setup he was, and so confident he was in the likes of Lando being able to drop it on pole. Interesting times. So in summary then, Q1, Carlos Sainz doesn't make it, blaming being impeded by an Alpine. I'm not sure that's quite right, Mr. Sainz, at turn 5, by the way. P16, Carlos Sainz, bloody Norris. So what does that mean for the I think the big story for tomorrow's race is the race for second in the constructors now. Third place in the Drivers' Championship is also at stake. When I say it's Alonso, Norris and Leclerc potentially, from memory. Don't quote me. But I think the big story is who's going to nail the second place in the championship between Mercedes and Scuderia Ferrari. And that, ladies and gents, Carlos Sainz going out in Q1 is significant. Closely followed by Lewis Hamilton, who does the same in Q2. Unbelievable. But listen, let's talk about this Lewis Hamilton stuff for now. Because again, you guys want to go and read this Mark Hughes article because it talks about it is a brilliant compare and contrast between Sir Lewis Hamilton's driving style, what he does so well, and why he's struggling in the W14 over the past 24 months, and Max Verstappen, what he does so well, and why he's excelled over the past 3 years in that ball that is red. There's a couple of different things, and I think we need to leverage this because it explains why Lewis was struggling today. So the article goes something like this, and don't quote me, but it goes something like this: that Lewis he's not quite a short. So when Peter's referring to short corners and shallow corners, that applies mostly at a turn 5 and a turn 7 at Abu Dhabi at the Yas Marina circuit. Super acute 90-degree hairpin-esque turns. That's where all that analysis comes into play, because your quicker corners like, I don't know, a Maggotts and a Beckett's, Spa, Eau Rouge, can't really, the shallow corner, short corner stuff that Peter's talking about doesn't necessarily apply around those type of fast medium turns. It's the geometric racing line that's the quickest way around them. But a turn 5 and a turn 7 at Abu Dhabi, the Yas Marina circuit, all of this applies. And around those turns, the likes of a Lewis Hamilton and a Lando Norris is all about the geometric racing line. And what I mean by that, they're looking to straight line the turns, turn in as late as possible, right? Late on the brakes, one swift movement of the steering. Max Verstappen's doing something very different, right? Again, only around the short, the hairpin S turns, turn 5, C turn 7 at the Yas Marina circuit. What Max is doing is not Harry Flatter, he's not last the late breakers into the turn. What he's doing is manipulating the trail braking to not oversteer is the wrong word, almost cheat code the corner, approaching the turn in a bit shallower than the rest of them. So he's taking less distance into a turn 5, and he's getting on the acceleration, on the throttle quicker than the rest. Hence why when you look at Q2, Lando is absolutely on it on scrub tyres, but he has no right, because there was no obvious error from Lando in sector 2. Max Verstappen has no right then, even in an RB19, unless he's doing something very special and very different, to be 4/10ths quicker than Lando Norris in that McLaren in sector 2 only. Go and have a look at sector 2, pedalers, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Turn 5 super tight, after which there is a long straight, super tight into turn 6 and turn 7, chicaney almost, after which you've got a long straight. So there's a massive opportunity for the likes of Max Verstappen, who's doing this weird trail braking thing that I don't completely understand. Super shallow into those turns, getting on the throttle very, very early, mind. It gives him the opportunity to make a lot of hay, right? Absolutely cement his advantage over the rest, and none of the rest of them can keep with him around there. I really want to see the onboards of his fastest laps, because again, it felt inevitable. I don't want to come on here every single race, Walter, what's going on, Frank music. I desperately don't want to come on here and do the homage to Max. As much credit as I think we give Max this time, we've got to give some of that credit to the team for rectifying the ineptitude of their setup between FP3 and Q1. They've done an absolutely amazing job. But Max Verstappen, as always, still needs to go and put the time in, doesn't he? And listen, if you were a betting man or woman, 5-4, Max Verstappen fastest qualifier, the easiest money that you will ever make. I'll confess, this is not financial services, nor is it financial advice, but I had a couple, I couldn't resist. 5-4, Max Verstappen, quali around Abu Dhabi. Have you seen his record? That's like his fifth, that's like the 5th consecutive time that he's dropped it on pole or something stupid. He's not shabby around here, and I think the strength of Max Verstappen around the Yas Marina circuit comes in at sector 2. Turn 5, he's a demon. He's doing something different than the rest. Turn 7, similar, and again carries that delta advantage through through the straights after each of those corners. Bonkers, pedalers, bonkers. I'm keen to see the bloody onboard. I am. I really am. Shout out to Yuki Tsunoda and Hulkenberg, who absolutely outperformed their cars respectively. Nailed it. But again, I didn't want to get too excited again with a couple of quid on Max Verstappen, if not because Q2 closed and he was only 2/10ths ahead of Lando Norris. Lando Norris was absolutely in the race for pole position. He had the machinery under it. Now, what I don't want to do, yeah, a lot of people say, well, Max Verstappen has the quickest car. He absolutely should put it on pole. But I think that misses a part of the nuance of this story. Here's my take, hot take, and you can take this to the bank. Lando Norris absolutely had the machinery requisite underneath him to put it on pole. Sadly for him, here's where I think McLaren went a bit awry. I think it's important. We all know how important it is to smash out pole at the Yas Marina circuit if you harbour aspirations to nail the race on Sunday. So here's what I think Red Bull were cognizant that they experienced difficulties in free practice. And again, qualifying is a momentum game, right? Ideally, you'd nail FP1 through FP3 and just build the momentum through each of the qualifying phases, through each of the qualifying sessions. And Max couldn't do that today, right? Because FP3 was chaos. They just didn't have the balance and his preferred handling dynamic. It was twitchy, so he couldn't do his cheat codes thing in turn 5, the trail braking thing in turn 5 and turn 7, because he didn't have confidence sufficient in the car. So here's what they did. Rather than delay using the fresh red labeled soft compound tires, straight away they were putting them on, right, so that Max could build some sort, notwithstanding difficulty in free practice, some sort of momentum in the qualifying sessions. Now, okay, so they're going to go in a tad disadvantaged in the race as versus a Lando Norris, for example. But you know what? Sometimes in priority order, it's most important that you put it on pole, right? Work the rest out in the race. You might not even get opportunities to use the fresh soft compounds. I say there's not a safety car. A bird in the hand beats a bird in 2 in the bush, right? And this is what Red Bull don't do so fantastically, each and every single one. And commend them, by the way, for allowing Max to jump straight on the fresh soft tyres each qualifying session. Checo goes out on the used, which again for Checo for me wants to stop doing. I do not want to destroy Checo here, Bedlers. But I think he needs to use a bit of common sense. If the handling dynamic is rogue throughout all the free practice sessions, and we know one thing for sure, right? Qualifying is always a momentum build of a game. Then Checo Perez, if you know that you lack some pace as versus your teammate Max Verstappen around the Yas Marina circuit, then why not drop on the fresh soft compound tyres? Because where are you now, sir? You didn't. You did the scrubs. You did the used in Q1 and Q2 with a view to save a set of fresh soft compound tyres for the race. But it doesn't even matter now, Checo, because you breached track limits. It was an infringement, and you got your faster slap in Q3, which would have seen you on P3. That's now been wiped out. Checo Perez starts the race from P9, and what use is that to him? Checo Perez, who at the best of the time can't bloody overtake, starting P9 in an RB19, a god-tier weapons-grade machine designed by the all-knowing, the omnipotent Adrian Newey, the greatest aero guy that's ever F1'd. Now Checo Perez wastes all that because he starts in P9. It's not smart. Put on the bloody red label, the fresh ones, sack off the scrubs. You can't afford to do that, Checo Perez. Know your station, sir. So I was a bit cheesed off of that. Lando Norris, similar thing. But again, Lando's probably got feel enough at the Yas Marina circuit in that papaya-coloured McLaren car to where he can get away with used. They had a decent free practice sessions, especially for FP3. They looked strong, both Oscar and Lando, so they can go and put on used. Checo couldn't afford to. Let's skip through to Q3. Checo once again goes out on the used, doesn't he, the first time round? Bloody Nora, what's all this, Checo? I just don't understand. He leaves me frustrated, man. And again, a lot of the other drivers, mention no names, Lewis, Lando, Charles and George, must be looking at that second seat, that second Red Bull seat, thinking, you know what, if I was in that, yeah, I'd be taking that to Max Verstappen each and every single time. Max, Frank, you're onto something. I'm going to come to that Lando mistake. In fact, let's talk about it now. And again, I was safe. I thought my money on Max Verstappen for fastest qualifier at 5-4 was safe. I was really, really comfortable until Lando goes and puts in. So Max goes out super early in Q3. But again, you get the pit lane shenanigans, right? It looks like a scene. Rush hour traffic on the M25. It's chaos. And again, for the avoidance of doubt, FIA, you need to do something about those pit lane shenanigans because it's going to get hectic. Lest we see the same thing next year when hopefully the championship is much closer. Sort your life out, FIA. The pit lane, the traffic jam in the pit lane is dangerous. You saw it yesterday during free practice when Max Verstappen pulled out and the bloody cameraman had to jump out the way. We can't keep repeating these mistakes until somebody gets injured. FIA, let it be known. Skip straight through to Q3 now. Max tries to get out early, but he's hindered, right? A lot of them go out earlier than him, but nevertheless, he puts down the time that will ultimately see him start from P1 tomorrow in the Grand Prix on his first go round, and that's because he's built the momentum. He knows and appreciates now with a decent setup the handling dynamic of that RB19 on fresh soft compound tyres. All these other bods, Lando again are used, done it before. Charles Leclerc used again. Checo Perez used again. All of these guys are prioritising the race when they know that you can't afford. If you want to win a race against Max Verstappen, the line of least resistance is to out-qualify him, pray for zero safety car, and try and get off into the sunset, just like Sebastian Vettel used to do 2010 to 2030. That's the line of least resistance. That's the way that you're going to give yourself the best chance. Stack the odds in your favour of beating a Max Verstappen. Qualifying P2 or lower, and Max is on P1. Well, we can all go home, right? There's very little chance. That's why it perturbs me, it frustrates me when I see all these guys trying to save a set of fresh compound tyres. Prioritise quali, chaps, and Lando doesn't do it, Checo doesn't do it, Charles doesn't do it. All of them start Q3 on a set of used tyres. Charles Leclerc, by the way, god tier lap from the chap because again he hasn't managed to build this momentum. That Ferrari was noddy throughout all of the qualifying sessions. Charles does in his mind in Q3. The first lap that he puts out there was an absolutely incredible one, but he's 1 second adrift of the quali leaders. Comes back to the pits, does Charles Leclerc, and says, what is going on? That was an incredible lap. I don't understand. So here's what Ferrari need to work on then. This is the conclusions, and there's massive speculation and conjecture in here. But here are my conclusions from Charles Leclerc's comments. Two things. We knew already that Ferrari, that Scuderia Ferrari red car is a tyre eater. But here's what I don't think we knew before, but have found out since, that there's something inbuilt in the dynamics of that Ferrari chassis where it performs less well than the others on tyres that have degged. Does that make sense? Charles Leclerc said it as much, that the curve of that performance, the performance of his car is very peaky. His performance curve super narrow, not dissimilar to the W14, right? And their zero pod concept, super peaky. And I think outside of, if you compare and contrast how, say, a McLaren works and how close it is to its optimal window performance on tyres that are degged, as versus Charles Leclerc's Ferrari, I think that McLaren is significantly better as versus Scuderia Ferrari of a Charles Leclerc, if that makes sense. When its tyres are degged, just doesn't work as well, that Scuderia Ferrari, as versus some of the others. That's what I feel like we learned. Anyway, Charles Leclerc goes in, puts on a set of soft compound tyres when the track's at its most evolved, goes out there and smashes out a lap 2/10 shy of Max Verstappen, and Martin Brundle absolutely nails it. Shout out to Charles Leclerc, potentially driver of the day, if that's such a thing in quali, for just basically being able to pull time out of his backside, right? On tap. Again, spent about 10 minutes talking about how qualifying is a momentum build of a game, right? You want to nail and understand all that you can about your setup and your car in free practice, and then go and build it through Q1, Q2, and Q3. Charles didn't have that opportunity. But yeah, and still, testament to the dude's pace and his ability, goes and pulls out a lap where he's 2/10 only adrift of one Max Verstappen. Shout out to the Monegasque Charles Leclerc. I enjoyed that lap still. But yeah, again, Verstappen well clear. And Verstappen's lap, if you go back and look at the telemetry, Verstappen's lap will be a function of that Sector 2 advantage. Nails turn 5, nails turn 7, and experiences doable competitive advantage over the enduring straights. It's genius. It's God tier. Absolute cheat code, and the rest are going to struggle to catch him tomorrow. They are. Lando, I've said it already, purple Sector 1, which had me worried for a brief second. But again, Max is going to do his... Here's what Red Bull and Max have done. The RB19 is set up... You break down... What you do is analyse the car. I've said this again, but I'm going to reiterate it because I think it's genius. You have a look over the course of the track, over all of the tracks currently on the F1 calendar, and see the type of corner that's most frequently occurring. They've done the analysis and broken it down to be medium to fast turns, your Beckett's and your Maggots and your Eau Rouges. That type of turn is most frequently occurring. So build a chassis in a car, a design philosophy that can nail those type of turns. No. That's the way to go about this. And Adrian Newey's absolutely nailed it. Max Verstappen too, a driving style that can nail it. He's always got the fast to medium turns. His weakness was supposed to be these short turns, but because he's doing this overturning or oversteer thing on trail braking into hairpin S turns, the likes of which are turn 5 and turn 7. And he knows that there is a massive material competitive advantage to nailing those turns because of the ensuing straights. He nails them each and every single time. 4/10, chaps. 4/10. Let's talk about Mercedes. George Russell looked very, very good all of the free practices. There is something about his car, Lewis Hamilton says, that he doesn't have in his car. There is a difference. The setups were meant to be identical, but there is something, said Lewis Hamilton, that he was struggling with. And he was struggling, again, common theme, peddlers. Lewis Hamilton needs a solid rear end because he depends upon it. It's his lifeblood. That's how he nails these purple sectors. And if you look across all of it, Singapore 18, all of the God tier weapons grade Lewis Hamilton laps, the one thing that he's always been able to leverage really, really well because of his driving style, because of his ability to nail a late break and the geometric racing line in sync. To do those things, he needs a rear end that's stable and dependable, right? Hasn't got it. Hasn't had it. Because of this zero pod design philosophy for as near as makes no difference 24 months now. They've done some workarounds and added some things and brought some upgrades. And for a while back there, it looked like Lewis had got his head around it. But yet and still the W14 rears its ugly rear end that lacks stability. If you don't have side pods, as at 2023, you're always going to struggle on the apex and at turning with instability at the rear. I've been saying this for 24 months and I'm tired of it. Mercedes, sort your lives out, guys and girls, because it's not looking good at the moment. You are wasting away the latter stages of one of the greatest drivers to ever do it in history, arguably the greatest 7-time champion, Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. And that is I tell you what's even more of a shame before I leave you, peddlers. I'll end on this. Final note from my notes. Gasly and Piastri, as at the time of writing, potentially impeding and were being not investigated, but it was noted by the sewers as an appendage. Henron, what's going on? W13, 14, never had rear performance and stability. There's a very famous, if you want to go and do a bit of fact checking, there's a very, I think Bryson the Legend at Natural Paradigm on Twitter shared this with me. There's a very famous picture that shows the wake, the W14 locking up and the direction of the wake as versus like the W11 or the W12. And the wake, the dirty air, you need to ship that outboard right. If you're going to have stability at the rear, which, by the way, is what Lewis Hamilton needs to nail purple sectors and God tier laps, You need side pods, big side pods. When they're in an era where there are no barge boards to do that work for you, you need wide side pods. That's why between 2022 and 2023, the god tier cars, RB19, they all made their side pods more robust, right, to manage that wake outboard outside of the car. Because if you're on about building a car that's aerodynamically efficient and fast through a Maggots and Beckett's and Eau Rouge, all of the turns that matter, medium to fast, the ones that occur most frequently in 2023 on the F1 calendar, then you need to, it's really, really important. Zero barge boards to do it for you. They've been outlawed. What you need is bigger side pods to assist in that. Mercedes don't have it, do they? They don't have it built into their design philosophy. And that, peddlers, is an absolute travesty of justice. Even more of a tragedy if you are an F1 fan who likes competition. Go back and watch 2021. Each and every single... Okay, so it ended in controversy, granted. Take that to the bank. Each and every single one of those races was competitive between two of the greatest drivers that, listen, I could live for another 50 years. Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen will be even then two of the greatest drivers to ever do it. People have said that the driver, I was having this conversation with somebody, I wish I could cite them. The driver that's going to come along and beat Max Verstappen probably isn't, beat Max Verstappen consistently to a World Drivers' Championship, probably isn't even in F1 yet. Think of Kimi Antonelli, one of those type of buds, right? It's going to need a new age type of driver with a different approach. So that to say this, finally, peddlers, and you guys are legends, do me a favour and smash the like. Only 27 likes, to be fair. That's my fault because I haven't reminded anyone. Do me a favour and smash the like as we round third base. Final point for me, peddlers. The biggest tragedy in all this. Watch the 2021 season and tell me that you wouldn't kill to have another season like that again. It's rare, peddlers, that we have two generational talents on the grid at the same time. We have that in Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. It would be an absolute travesty for F1 as a sport, for F1 fans around the world, for the drivers, the god tier drivers that are Sir Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, if we didn't see a rematch of 2021, because that's what the world has been waiting for the past bloody 2 years. Mercedes have failed each and every... It's not Red Bull's fault, peddlers. It's not Red Bull. They did their job. Adrian Newey got his pen out and designed a god tier car, as he always has done. Now, nobody bats 1,000, but 9 times out of 10, new rules and regulations. If I'm an F1 driver, give me the Adrian Newey car. They've done nothing wrong. Christian Horner, helmet mark. Okay, so maybe not helmet. He said a couple of dodgy things. Max Verstappen, Adrian Newey, they've done their job, what they were supposed to do. The onus now is on Mercedes. They've got 99 days. I know they've diversified resource just like they did incorrectly in 2021 to the outer year car, to 2024 car, and they need to do this. It is so important for all of the aforementioned, for racing, for competition, for the opportunity to see two generational drivers go head to head in as near as makes no difference, equal machinery. F1 needs Mercedes to sort their act out. Really, really does. I implore the likes of Toto Wolff and co to sort their car out, because otherwise it's a massive mistake. It's a massive, that's a big, it's a big faux pas, and it's a big opportunity to miss. Who knows? Like I've said already, there's some good drivers on the grid. Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Lando maybe, but you could argue that the guy or girl that's going to take it to Max Verstappen on a consistent basis over the next 10 years, say, Lewis is there, yeah, but Lewis isn't going to be around for too much longer, 3 to 5 years, potentially at a push. Once Lewis is gone, which one of those guys is going to take it to Max Verstappen? Ergo, take advantage of Sir Lewis Hamilton while he's here. Imploring Mercedes, build him a car that's capable, a set of wheels that warrants, that enables him to challenge a Max Verstappen in the god tier Red Bull. At the hands of one Adrian Newey. Let me read a couple of your Frank, you are a legend. I hope you enjoyed the race, man. I hope you get a good one. I hope Lando can pitch a challenge to Max Verstappen, but am I banking on it? Max Verstappen is inevitable, peddlers, I'm telling you. I am telling you, music is life. You guys are legends. Lane 2025, we have multiple race winners. Russell, Charles, Lewis, and a lot. Here's hoping, Lane, but based upon what? Based upon what? Maybe Anthony Davidson put forth a brilliant theory, and I'd make this the final one, peddlers, because I've run long. As per usual, Anthony Davidson put forth a brilliant theory in free practice, and that was that inevitably, in the first year of a brand new set of rules and regs, you will have one team that will make the jump right. One team that will have done it better than the rest and will gap the other teams, whether it's Braun 2009 and Jenson Button with the double diffuser, or an Adrian. Do you know what I mean? There's always been one team who have nailed the new rule set better than the rest. And Adrian Newey and Red Bull have done that this time around. Thereafter, however, before the new rule set and reg change, which, by the way, will be in 2026, the team always converge. There are no secrets in F1. You can see the underbelly, the Venturi tunnels of that Red Bull. Checo Perez has crashed it enough times and warranted a crane hoisting enough. They know there are no secrets in F1. So now the others have the knowledge and the expertise and the requisite technicals, the technical knowledge to converge, right? So inevitably, after the big step that the one team that nails it makes, the other teams will start to converge. And Anthony Davidson makes the point that we are getting there. Maybe not next year, but we will see it. They will converge more. They will Constantina. But I digress. Peddlers, I'm going to run. Got things to do. Let me read a couple of your comments quickly. Voldenock Lane thinks Max will be out of the sport after 2024. But you know what? It's a conversation that we want to have, you know, because Max is here for a good time, not a long time, right? In the words of Drake. And he's made that clear on more than one occasion, hasn't he? Ronyo says, I'm a major Max fan, but I don't like that Lewis can't fight with a better car the last 2 seasons. Nobody likes it, Ronyo. Nobody likes it. Anyway, we've done that long enough. It's a missed opportunity for the world of F1. You know how many? Imagine, hypothesize that the rules and regs hadn't changed after the 2021 season. Imagine they'd kept it stasis, and we've gotten another 2 seasons of Lewis and Max battling in borderline equal machinery. Incredible. Do you know how many more eyes would be on the sport? You would have had like Abu Dhabi 2021 every single race pretty much since then. Oh my gosh. The growth of the sport would have gone gangbusters. But again, they did what they did, right? They did what they did, and we are where we are. Outlaw says, thanks, Scam. You're a legend, Outlaw. Do me a favour and like and smash the subscribe if you could on your way out. I'm going to run 2024. James Allison, Adrian. Yeah, I don't disagree, Henron. It is the battle of the aero boffins. Matt's crashing in the last 4 years. So Voldemort, you understand the pushback on Max Verstappen though, because early on in his career, 2016 circa, he was a bit of a crash merchant. Now, as at 2023, is he a different driver? Has he grown and matured? Has he whittled those mistakes out? Are those mistakes trending to zero, you might argue, for Max Verstappen? Absolutely. 100%. He's a different driver now, but sometimes old habits, not even old habits, old people that have judged Max Verstappen, people are still judging 2023 Max Verstappen on 2016 Max Verstappen's form, right? That's the issue. That's the issue. Peddlers, I'm going to run. Thank you so much for joining. Do me a favour, if you haven't smashed the like, smash the like on your way out of here. My little man's telling me to get off, apparently. You've gone too long, Daddy. I'm coming. I'm being boss's orders. You wouldn't know how bossy 3-year-olds can be, or most of you would know actually. I'm just finding that out for the first time. Guys, like, subscribe. If you're listening on a podcasting platform, do me a favor, scroll to the top and leave a 5-star review. Similarly on iPod, Apple Podcast, whatever that's called. You guys have been legends. I will see you after the race. I hope it's a brilliant race. I hope the final one can deliver as did Las Vegas and Singapore before it, but he's hoping, fingers crossed. You guys have been legends. As always, like, comment, subscribe if I haven't said that already. And remember, have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the racing. But remember to look, but never stare.